Greetings from Sri Aurobindo Centre for Advanced Research. Namaskar. When we study Sri Aurobindo, he appears to us in many facets. His personality sometimes seems to us as a yogi, sometimes he seems a writer, a nationalist, a patriot. His political views also have been taken. It's been written by him in his books. And his speeches have been documented. And there are people who have written commentaries on him. His political philosophy. Of course, he doesn't think himself to be a philosopher, more of a poet. But when we study, we see his philosophy. It is so relevant to this day. And that is why some of us call him Sri Aurobindo, the political philosopher. That's what he is. The basis of his philosophy has always been the evolution of humanity. Now, what is evolution? He says evolution is not finished. Reason is not the last word. So you and I, who are rational, who say, give reason a chance, be reasonable, we are not on the last rung of the evolutionary process. Just the way man emerged out of the animal, a superman, says Sri Aurobindo, will emerge out of man. Superman in terms of higher consciousness. And this evolution is essentially about consciousness, transformation of consciousness. He says it is the rising of the consciousness along the regions beyond the mind. And it terms these ranges as supramental ranges. And not only that, it's also the descent, the coming down of the absolute, the infinite, the divine spirit into humanity. And thus, as human beings, realizing the kingdom of heaven on earth. Our earthly life being the life divine. That is, in essence, what his philosophy is, and it transcends through all his works. Now, I have divided my talk into three sections, okay? The first is about ancient India. India, not the political map. India, the civilization, the Bharatvarsh. Second section would be Sri Aurobindo, the political philosopher, the international political philosopher, where he envisioned a world union. No one ever, no radical thinker, philosopher, statesman, politician ever thought of a world union based on spiritual basis. There would be a spiritual unity for a world union. That's what Sri Aurobindo was, an international political philosopher. And the third, very interesting third one, the coming of the new race. He said humanity, the new race, will be one idea. Humanity will be one feeling. Life, irrespective of who we are, from where we come, will have one status. That is the new race. So these are the three sections. Now let's start with the ancient Bharatvarsh, ancient India, the ancient Indian civilization. Sri Aurobindo said, a country, a civilization that counts on the Vedas, the Puranas, the mighty nobility of the Mahabharata, Ramayana, can never ever crumble. He said the sacred light of India has never ever faded and will never ever fade. It might get dusty, but it will never fade. And he said, India has not yet spoken her last creative word. There is more to come. That's what he said. He took a small mantra, a small line from Rig Veda, just to give us as an example. Krinvantu Vishwam Aryam. People make this world a noble place. What a profound thought. People, polity, don't make the family, individual, society, make the world a noble place to live in. It is so profound that Swami Dayanandji of Arya Samaj, he made this the motto. That is the relevance of Rig Veda. It is till date relevant. He said about the Puranas, when it was a gloried era, gloried times, fantastic people were so creative. He said, the spirituality in us, the ethics, the psychic thinking that we have, the psychic being we call, it has lots to do with the Puranas. From the polity point of view, the core of the Puranas was harmony. And at the forefront of the harmony was secularism. Each one was free to seek God, to seek the truth in his or her own way. So there were as many paths to Godwardliness as there were the number of men and women. That is secularism. And that runs through our veins even to this date. That is the profoundness, that is the effect of the Puranas. And he said, in the ancient times, the core of life was based on intuitive thinking. The Saptarishis, they were not like us. They belonged to a higher consciousness. So based on the intuitive thinking, they wrote about dharma. Now, what is dharma? It is a truth of being. Dharma. Dharma means, we'll go slightly deeper. Dharma means that which holds me to my own true inner being. Dharma means that which holds me in oneness to my fellow human beings. Dharma means that which holds me in oneness to the whole universe. Dharma is about oneness of consciousness. And that is the intuitive part of it. And all the rules, regulations, culture, laws were built around it. They were the intellectual reasoning. Those were the Shastras. And the Shastras were documented. How the kingdom should be run, the education policies, the warfare, the role of a king, the role of a husband, a student, the wife, a mother. To the extent, Shastras wrote how to rear elephants and horses. Imagine, that was the thing. All around oneness of consciousness, which means people in the ancient times lived, breathed, slept spirituality. That was what ancient India was. The king was the divine representative, okay? He was not any self-serving, cruel person who said, I'll kill you, I'll hang you for no reason. No. He had the Shastras to guide him. And therefore they were sacrosanct. And all abided. There was a commonality of acceptance. Every individual was respected. It was seen to it that everyone's potential was brought out. Sri Aurobindo's terms as the soul idea. He says everyone was capable of having a soul idea. An idea which came out from the depths of the soul, the truth. And people voiced their opinions and they were accepted also. And once they were accepted, the whole kingdom, the community became more and more noble because of the soul idea. And then he said something about spiritual solidarity. Spiritual solidarity. He said, doing all these things, people learn to live in their inner minds and soul. There was a sort of spiritual solidarity. And he says there were so many incursions. People came from outside, conquered, plundered, took over, ruled for centuries together. And the more they came, more the pressure, the more the Indians lived in the inner minds and soul. That was the spiritual solidarity. And Sri Aurobindo muses, he says, maybe that was the destiny. And that is why, even to this day, we live in our inner minds and soul. Beautiful, no? I mean, it's just beautiful. I'm telling you, Sri Aurobindo, the political philosopher, fantastic. Now, let's go to the next section. Next is Sri Aurobindo, the international political philosopher. Again, it's about human evolution. And when it comes to human evolution, it's about uniting to be one. Oneness. Oneness means human unity. And he said, if you have to study human unity, if you have to understand human unity, it has to be in the perspective of a nation or a state. And he said, what a nation is? It is a living collective unit of humanity. Nation is made of people, a collective unit. The living people make nation. And what is a state? State is that central authority that controls. And he said, for human unity, nationhood is the answer, not the state. State is a central agency, a central authority. You've got to obey it. You've got to listen to me. And all the individuals have to subjugate, subordinate, listen to those few individuals. They could be elected, selected, nominated. But that is that. And Sri Aurobindo says it's all about collective egoism, collective ambition. We want to be a military power. We want to have a oneness in the world by our commercial prowess. We want to be politically so effective that all the countries listen to us. It could be cultural, so it could be songs, it could be literary, anything. We want to be the best. And he gives a very cool term, very nice term. He says, it is, sacred egoism. Egoism, sacred. So, please sacrifice your individuality. As an example, he gives the instance of United States of America during the World War. The state decided to go to war. We will go to war. There were a lot of people who objected. He said, why? It's not our war. Why should we go? There were a lot of people who said no. But the state said yes. And so many of our sons were sacrificed because it was a state decision. The economic policies, the taxation rules those days, all were changed because the state decided we will go to war. This is just an example. It applies to all the countries. When the country decides as a state, people give their lives. People give their lives. Sri Aurobindo says, look, altruism is not bad, okay? Sacrificing your life for a greater cause is not bad, obviously not. But then to lose your identity, losing your own self, can that be an ideal? That can't be an ideal. Now, just because I'm saying Sri Aurobindo is an idealist, that don't do what the country says, no. He was a realist also. 1906 to 1910, only 4 years. He was in the political field actively. And before long, the Viceroy of India had to write, look, beware, he is the most dangerous person to reckon with. They were scared of him. That was Sri Aurobindo. It was he who decided to split the Congress. We will not be docile. Tilak and him got together, said, we will not give a cheek just because, we will not give the other cheek just because our sovereignty of the motherland is at stake. We will fight for it. He was very, very clear. And you know what happened then? During 1950, he said, watch out. During the Korean War, Sino-Korean War, he said, China is going to come for India. And the mother actually, in her occult religion, saw Chinese in Pondicherry. That's what it, and he said, China will come for India through Tibet. And it was true. When it came to partition, he didn't mince word. He said, it's not because of communal reasons that India is being partitioned, okay? Most of the Muslims were earlier Hindus. We have the same culture. It is because of Jinnah's political ambition. It was very clear. And he said it. When it came to Kashmir, he said, beware, watch out, because Pakistan wants to make northern India an Islamic state. He was very precise. He knew what he was saying. He was idealist, but also a realist. That's what he was. He also spoke about democracy. When he was speaking about nation building, he said democracy is a good thing. In terms of socialism, democracy is a good thing in terms of evolution. Earlier there was this emperors and kings and monarchs who with the ministers would govern. But now, during democracy here, it's the people's voice, right? So it's percolated down to the people. But, it's of the people, by the people, for the people. But he says, be careful. Democracy is still very crude now. Because for a democracy to be successful, people have to be intelligent. They have to be taught to make intelligent judgments. They have to have character in their action. Otherwise, it'll be irrational. And it is. There is chaos. Democracy is dividing people. That is not human unity. They have the vote bank politics, caste, creed, color, sect. In India, we have every other day some section of people wanting to be in the scheduled list. Why? Because some politician wants that vote. So divide. Democracy is dividing people. And that's why it's not actually what it is meant for. Not uniting people. We've got to be very careful about democracy. It's good, but he says this is not the last stage of democracy. In the evolution, a new democracy will come. A new democracy will come. He said another thing about the nation. Very nice term. He said about centripetal force, at the center, and the centrifugal force. He said this is something very subjective, psychological, that holds the people together. Now, how shall I explain? Let me explain in contemporary terms. Let's imagine an international cricket match, or an international soccer match, or the Olympics. We all get together, cheer for our country. Come on, let's win. Is there a rule that we should cheer? Is there a police breathing down our necks and telling us, cheer for your country? No, it's very psychological. It's very subjective. That's what holds people together. He said, that's the thing. That's a centripetal force. Heart has reasons that reasons can't explain. That's centripetal force. That's what makes a nation, not the state rules or laws. He says that psychological thing is very important for the nation. You know about how US became a nation? Because our central political consciousness that happened. All realized we have to become politically conscious because there is this outside force who wants to take advantage of us. Let's get together. There was this United States of America, united in political consciousness. That's what America was, and that's how it became a nation. Now, it doesn't happen overnight, Sri Aurobindo explains. It took 1,000 years for France to become a nation. It took more than 2,000 years for Italy to become a nation. So it doesn't happen overnight. And there are positive as well as negative effects of this centripetal force. He said to learn from experiences of countries. This Ireland, India, they fought for their freedom. Very positive. We want to be ourselves, that was the cry. Freedom because we want to be ourselves. And when it came to India, Sri Aurobindo gave that perspective. He awakened that consciousness which went deep into the spirits, into the soul of the people, and it became a nation soul. He went around giving speeches left, right, center, across India, convincing people, it is the same God which resides in all of us. All the millions, let's get together. And the cry from the nation's soul was nationalism. Swadhinata, Swadeshi movement, boycott anything that's outside. We want to be ourselves. Sri Aurobindo gave this awakening. That's what he did. He said, this country of ours, it's not a piece of land. It's a force of millions of people. It's a Shakti. Come on. He said, God is with us. God is in our prayers. And then people realized it. It touched a chord somewhere. And faith and God was in their armor. Every protest was in the name of God. Nationalism became a religion. And they said, we want total freedom. Purna Swaraj. It means freedom in all its entirety. Freedom of the soul, the mind, the emotions, the physical, everything. That is what Swaraj was. Purna Swaraj. Never ever has this happened. And Sri Aurobindo, the political philosopher, got this. He was extremely. And then he said, that's a positive part of it. But beware, there is a negative aspect to it also. What is this negative aspect? He said it could have a negative turn. He spoke about Germany. He said Germans were very focused in their vision. They were very methodical. They were very intelligent. But it was much more than we want to be ourselves. We want to be for ourselves, to ourselves. Everything for ourselves. They become aggressive. It was not spiritual. It was intellectual. And Sri Aurobindo says that the inner strength of Germany was not because of some Bismarck or Wilhelm Kaiser II. It was not because of some politician, soldier or statesman. It was because of philosophers like Kant, Hegel, Fichte, Nietzsche, like the great thinker, poet, Goethe, and then also the music composers who come once in 1,000 years, like Wagner, like Beethoven. That was its inner strength. And he said, I mean, he was explaining the evolution of the human nature. And he said, rational age, and then the subjective age, and then the spiritual age. And he says, after the rational age, at the turn of the subjective age, it will be Germany. It will be Germany who will be leading. Just so good. But be careful. Learn from their experience. Let not the negative forces influence you. He told in no uncertain terms that Hitler is Asura, the devil incarnate. And he said, beware, because he's going to come and take over the world. And just to prove that he was against the negative forces, he contributed fund to the Allied forces, knowing, and we all knew that we were a colony of the Britishers. We were a British colony. But in spite of that, he said, we will not let Asuric forces, the devil, take over the world. He was a realist. Sri Aurobindo, the international political philosopher that he was. That's it. He was an international philosopher. And then he said, when it comes to nation, when it comes to the world, he said you have to look at it. You have to look at it from the perspective of an ideal. You know, an ideal that is already existing. It is there, inherent. It is relevant. It is underlying the human race. People want to be together. It is there. Human unity is there. But it is out of own free will. Out of own free will. Out of their own liking, they want to be together. He says they will aggregate together in their own free will. And these aggregates together, they will form a federal country, and the federal countries will get together out of their own free will, form a confederation of nations, and then it will be a world union. Till date, no single statesman or a politician or a thinker has said this, that there will be a world union based on spiritual oneness. And he said, when this comes about, it will not come about by an ideal thinker. It will be there by a politician who knows the temperament of the time, and he knows the common man's thinking. He said there will be a lot of drama. There will be a lot of drama, revolts, revolutions. People will speak against state collectivism. He said there will be a philosophic anarchism to bring about the voice of liberty, individual liberty. And I was speaking to someone, we were discussing. It is happening. It is happening, and it's happening in stages of evolution. First, there was this physical war. With the might, people were conquering countries, nations, plundering them. With the physical might, wars, trying to make world one. Alexander the Great, Napoleon, they all wanted to conquer the world by their physical force. The next stage was by politics, by commercial. We will buy goods. We will use a commercial influence. The multinational scale. The Chinese have covered the whole world. They have people who have studied China, they know there's a world order in the plan with the militarization and the commercial acumen. You want to take over the world. Physical, then the greed of money, emotion, commercialism, then the mind, information technology. They say just the way you will be rich if you have oil, now they say you will be rich if you have information. You can take over countries That's what is happening. You don't know where the information is coming from, who is taking the information. People are swayed in their emotion just because of information. They buy things, they vote for people based on emotions that are happening all across. People are playing with information. So first the physical, then the emotion, the intellect. But people say no, it's not going to happen. There has to be a psychological unity based on spirituality. These are just experiments of nature to say, look, there is a next stage coming. And Sri Aurobindo predicted there will be revolutions. There will be revolutions. And there have been revolutions for individual liberty. Have you ever heard of color revolution? Color revolution? You know, when we vote, when we cast our vote, they paint a purple color here. That's very symbolic because your voice has been heard. My voice has been heard. Our voices have been heard. It's very symbolic. People across, especially the youth, they have revolted. They said, we want our voices to be heard, and that's what the color revolution is all about. There was this jasmine revolution in China, snow revolution in Russia. There was purple revolution in Iran, green revolution in Iraq, and then there was this revolution in Lebanon, Kyrgyzstan, Philippines. Now we see it happening in Hong Kong. People want their voices to be heard, a revolt of sorts. And Sri Aurobindo had predicted. This is because the world union concept is not something simple. It's very complex. Complex because it is unity of all the diversities. It is unity in diversity. Each one of us are unique in our own way. So there are innumerable variables, varieties. And the whole challenge is to bring about a unity, getting all these variables, all these diversities together. World union is about diversities, and these diversities come about by self-determination. When you unite people, you unite these innumerable diversities, it is based on self-determination. You know what self-determination is? Let's just step back and understand what self-determination is. Every human being, every individual has an inner being. And every individual has the right to seek that inner being. And not only seek, but has the right to be the mirror image of that inner being. And this does not apply only to individuals. It applies to the collective also. When I said nation is a living collective unit. So this self-determination also applies to the collective unit. Every collective unit has a true inner being. And the people have the right, should have the right to seek it and be its inner mirror image. And this right cannot be given by some external will or external idea. It has to come from within. It has to come from within because that is self-determination. That is liberty. And the next stage is, after having self-determined, people as individuals would have to respect the self-determination of the others. The collective, the nation would have to respect the self-determination of the other nations. There is a sense of mutuality that has to be brought about, a mutual understanding. And this mutual understanding cannot come about by some mechanical laws mechanically. It has to come from within. Sri Aurobindo explains very beautifully. It is a very spiritual explanation and it touches the soul. He says, the kingdom of heaven has to be realized within each individual. And not only that, it has to be realized. The kingdom of heaven has also to be realized in the humanity, in the human race. And once this realization comes out of self-determination, human unity will be there, based on spirituality. That is the basis of world union. When free aggregates of human beings will collect together, form federal nations, and then we'll have confederation of nations. That is the world union. And he says, the characters of the world union will be as follows. There are 4 things. He says, first of all, mankind will be one nation. One nation. And the principle will be unity of mankind, but freedom will be its fundamental basis. Again, I'm saying, diversity will be its objective, unity will be its principle, and freedom will be its fundamental basis. And then what's going to happen? Then countries, nations will get together, people will get together out of their own free will. And Sri Aurobindo explains that it is not the geographical proximities that will matter. It is something deeper, something psychological. And it depends from individual nations to individual nations. For example, he says, England can team up with or aggregate with Canada and Australia, but not necessarily Ireland. Russia need not get together with Ukraine or Finland or Poland. But he said people can get together also. The USSR was formed, though it didn't last. He said about the United States of Europe 100 years back, and it has formed. He also said maybe United Arab Emirates, Iran, Turkey might not get together. Though maybe culturally they could be the same, they could belong to the same race, but no, they might not. This is world union happens, and then economy will fall in place. The competitions that are there, the cutthroat competition will soften up. Because once the understanding is there, things will soften up. Maybe someone will allow their ports to other countries to carry on business. Some may allow the roads to come in. Some may allow the planes to fly over them. There will be an understanding. And when that understanding happens, it will be wonderful. It will be wonderful because Sri Aurobindo says there will not be any wars because there will be no force on nations in the world union. There will be no politics because everyone's voice will be heard. There might be disagreements, but these disagreements will be solved by agreements and not by adjudication. Of course, these are at the administrative level, economic level, commercial level, political level. But a psychological thing, a spiritual thing will happen. It will happen later on. And that will come the next stage. But before that, It is not that Sri Aurobindo painted a very rosy picture. He warned that the world is going through a crisis. And we see this. Catastrophes after catastrophes after catastrophes are happening. Series, one after the other. People are killing each other. It's man-eat-man situation. There's war everywhere. I mean, you name it, it's there. The climate, the education, the politics, wars are going on. And he says it is going to happen. It is going to happen unless and until there is a mutuality, there is unity, and there is harmony based on some deeper truth. He says, give your consciousness a chance to come up with the spiritual truth. Otherwise, it's going to be catastrophic. Yes, when the heavens come down, there will be reaction. It is an evolutionary process. But we have to stand up. We have to get together and be united in one consciousness. He raised the flag. He rang the bell of caution. And now, let's go to the next stage. Sri Aurobindo, the harbinger of the new race. He says, he has written that a new human race will come. And in this race, humanity will be one idea, one feeling. Our life will be one status, irrespective of who we are, where we come from. It's going to be beautiful. And he says, it's going to come naturally. The situation will be such. He muses, saying that actually religion should have done it. Should have brought people together. But sadly, religion has sown the swords of discord. Seeds which disunite people have been sown by religion, not of unity. And on the other hand, he said, science has done such a wonderful job. When they discover, when they invent, when they develop, they do it for whole humanity. In this pandemic that has shaken the world, where people have died, countless people have died, it is the scientists who have developed the vaccines. They have developed the vaccines for humanity. The doctors, the nurses, the frontline workers all have gotten together and saved humanity. He says, it's beautiful. The science has done a beautiful job. In any case, let's go further. He says, in the coming of the new race, there are four things that we should know. One is, we should know about the ideal of oneness. Then, there will be the psychological oneness. Third is the spiritual oneness. Fourth is the living in that oneness. Very, very logical. Very logical. When it came to the ideal of oneness, he said, obviously, oneness is an ideal. It is the supreme truth. All of us who are separate egos, separate identities will have to come together in one consciousness. That is the ideal, to live in one consciousness, in oneness. That is the ideal. And he said, every individual will fulfill in their consciousness spirituality. There will be a spiritual fulfillment in each individual. That's an ideal, and that is the first step to nation building. When each of its citizens will fulfill God in their lives. That is the ideal. It's very psychological. Okay, it's nothing to do with rules and regulations. And then he says, okay, what is the next stage? Next step, next stage. Psychological oneness. The concept of psychological oneness is already there in humanity. People know they have got to live together in harmony. The framework is already there. The League of Nations, the United Nations organizations, every year hundreds and thousands of meetings are conducted at different levels for different topics, different issues, calamities or economy or climate or water, environment, war, food, what have you. Everyone is conducting meetings. How do we work together to make one world? But the truth seekers, they are saying, come on, it's not progressing. We are where we were. It's stagnated. The world is not progressing. Like someone said, the world has gotten rotten. It's like a rotten apple. You can give injections, you can give medicines, you can give anything, but nothing will happen because it's rotten. Get a new apple, get a new consciousness. Let the new soul speak. For the new soul to come, it needs a heart. It needs a heart. And Sri Aurobindo came with this term, with this concept, with this vision, the religion of humanity. This term, religion of humanity, is not new. It was there in the 18th century. But it was very rational, based on reason. Good things happened. Humanitarianism bloomed. But then, it was not spiritual. Sri Aurobindo said that this religion of humanity that is to come is spiritual. It is just a concept, a dream, a far off thought. But he said the seed has been sown. At one instance he explains, the seed does not know what it will be when it becomes a tree, but it will become. The religion of humanity will become. It will be based on spirituality. And Sri Aurobindo said, the crux of the matter, the core of the matter, the central theme is that mankind is the Godhead that is to be worshipped. No other ideal, family, institution, or nation can take its place. Man is sacred to man. War, capital punishment, degradation of an individual or a group of individuals by others will not be tolerated. Oppression, exploitation of class by class, nation by nation, institution or religion will be treated as crimes against the religion of humanity. He went further. He said, look, every individual is sacred. Every man, woman, child is sacred. The body of man must be respected, prevented and saved from preventable disease, from preventable death. Life of man must be strengthened, ennobled, freed from belittling experiences, freed from being mechanical, Life can't be mechanical. The mind must be given enough opportunity for growth and development so that it can be useful to the society, it can serve the society. And all this, he says, is not a fantastic thought. This has to be lived. That is the religion of humanity. There will be no disease. People will die less because of good health. They will respect each other irrespective of race, color, religion, whatever. There will be respect for each other because each one is a Godhead. There will be spiritual oneness, psychological thing. And he said, for this to happen, first the ego should soften. Once the ego softens, then the understanding becomes clearer. People want to get together. They let go of the guard of separatism, that I am separate, I am different from you. The ego brings in this. Ego, he says, is the enemy of class, of nations, of religion. He said, let's soften this. And when he said soften this, he comes up with the three Godheads of the soul. Three Godheads of the soul. Liberty, equality, fraternity. These three terms were used long before, during the French Revolution. But what happened? We don't hear them very often these days. Because in these days of commercial, in this materialistic age, this doesn't have much meaning. Because if I am given the liberty to make as much money as possible, and if I have the capability, I will make more money compared to the man next to me. There will be inequality. If everyone is brought to an equal level, then we snatch away their liberty. Liberty and equality are always in friction when they come together. When there is liberty, there cannot be equality. When there is equality, there cannot be liberty. And when there is friction, where is the question of fraternity? People cannot live together. But Sri Aurobindo says, these are the three Godheads and have to be lived the Vedic way. The way the Vedic sages explained it to us. He said that in the Vedas it is explained that we have to liberate ourselves from ego, because the ego creates a blanket of ignorance, which creates maya, which creates illusions. And once we are liberated from this ignorance of the ego, created by the ego, we suddenly find that we are all equal. We belong, we are of the same consciousness. The spark in us, the spark in every one of us is the same consciousness. We are equal. And when there is liberty and a sense of equality, we feel all of us are equal. Obviously, there will be brotherhood. There will be fraternity. That is the beauty of this. He says we have to live this. And so the next question comes. We have the ideal, we have the psychological oneness, where we have the religion of humanity. Then we have the spiritual oneness because of the three Godheads of the soul: liberty, equality, and fraternity. And then how do we live in this oneness? He says this spiritual oneness can be brought about by living more and more deeply within ourselves. Every man and woman will exceed himself or herself. They will exceed to perfection, to divine perfection. And he explained the concept of the yoga of perfection. He says people will work towards a divine perfection. That is a different chapter altogether. But the idea is that all of us have this capability of exceeding oneself, and the deeper and deeper and deeper we go, the better it is. But he said it's not so easy. It is not so easy because we see the world around. There is chaos all across. And as I said earlier, there is total catastrophe. The world is in a crisis. What do we do about it? He says the good thinking people, the spiritual people, the right-minded people, they will also suffer. They will also suffer in this chaos because the Son of God, the daughter of God, who's born on earth, will have to carry the cross. The path is not going to be easy. It's not an easy way. But he says the evolution will happen. If not today, it's going to happen tomorrow. Let's prepare for the change. If we don't prepare for the change, it'll get pushed to a later date. It'll go further and further away, and it's not going to happen soon. The human race, the new race, is not going to come unless we decide to change ourselves, to change our consciousness, to evolve to a higher consciousness. That is what Sri Aurobindo is all about. In his personality as the political philosopher. That's what I want to say. But before I end, I would just like to say what he spoke about India. He said, India is a noble country, a spiritual country. It has always been a spiritual country. But he says, in the past, as a nation, they did not have the intent, the purpose to fulfill God in their lives. He spoke about collective consciousness. That was not there. Individual consciousness, yes, each one wanted to liberate themselves. But as a nation, as a collective consciousness, we did not have a purpose to fulfill God in our lives. He even went to the Constitution of India. He said it's about being socialistic, secular, sovereign, democratic country, having justice, equality, liberty, fraternity, all the noble things, all the good things. But he says even our constitution stops short of saying that the nation's purpose is to fulfill God in all our lives. The collective consciousness. If that happens, this is the forward path which Sri Aurobindo has laid for us. And if that happens, it'll be such a wonderful thing. Someone said, India's role in the future will be wonderful. It will have heavy responsibility. It'll be huge. It'll be huge because its role in this reunification of the world would be very meaningful. It will spearhead the movement of unification, and it will speak about the coming light, about the coming of the new human race. Thank you so much. Namaskar.